Good evening, children. During my last discussion, we had completed the kingdom Monera, and today we will start with our fifth topic, which is morphology of flowering plants. Ever since we have started with our classes after the summer break, children, we had completed the living world and the kingdom Monera. So for a change, today we'll start with something on morphology of flowering plants, and let's start with flower. Now we already know that reproduction is the most important function of any living organism for the survival of species, and this in flowering plants is performed by the flower. So what is a flower, children? Usually we know flowers as the most beautiful and conspicuous part of a plant, but by definition a flower is a condensed, specialized shoot of an angiospermic plant. Now, just like the leaves, flowers also develop either terminally or either by axillary or by terminal buds. Axillary bud is the one that is found in the axil of the stem and the leaf, right? And terminal bud, that means at the tip of the branches. Now let us start with the structure of a typical flower, and if you remember this, you have done the base of this topic you have done in class 9th. So the beginning of this will be like a revision to you. Alright, so first of all let us start from the base of the flower, which is the stalk or a pedicel. So this is called as a pedicel and it is also called as a stalk. So those flowers which are connected to the stem by means of pedicel, they are called pedicellate, right? And those flowers which do not have a pedicel, that is they are attached directly, we call them as sessile. All right, S-E-S-S-I-L-E. Now here the pedicel, it mixes, it joins up or it forms later a group of 5 sepals, right? These are called in a whorl called as calyx. They are green in color and they are protective to the flower when the flower is in a bud condition. This is the first floral whorl. Moving on to the second floral whorl is the colored part of the flower, and this is made up of petals, right? The collection of these petals, they are called as corolla, and they are brightly colored so as to attract the insects for pollination. So this is the numbering I am writing. This forms the second floral whorl. Coming to the third whorl, this is called as the stamen, and the collective whorl is called as the androecium. So what is one stamen, children? Stamen in one piece is a bilobed anther and a filament. This will be one stamen. So if you see this yellow colored structure, the bilobed head is called as the anther, and the hairy structure to attach it to the base of the flower called filament. Together we call it as the stamen. But the collection of stamens, like you can see there are 4 in this diagram because it is the longitudinal section. So could be 5 or any number. So the collection is called androecium, and this forms the third whorl. Coming to the last whorl of the flower, what we call as the gynoecium, and this is made up of pistil or carpel. So what is pistil or carpel? It is made up of 3 parts, a sticky or hairy stigma, right? Then continuing as the long tubular style, which is swollen at the bottom into ovary, and this ovary contains ovules, right, which are the future seeds that will be formed inside the fruit. Now here bract is a term. If we revise what is a bract, children, I'll first show you from your old textbook, maybe you recollect the same. This is your class 9th book, and this is a bract. So bougainvillea, if you remember, you have it near your assembly ground only, the pink colored flower, the pink colored bracts. You can see, children, especially here, the pink bright colored structure is actually nothing but the modified leaf. And where is the actual flower? It is white in color, inconspicuous and very small. So sometimes when the flowers are very small and inconspicuous, insects cannot note it easily. right? So the surrounding green leaves, they modify into brightly colored structures called bracts. So what is a bract, children, by definition? Flowers arise in the axil of a small leaf-like structure called the bract. Example, bougainvillea. Now those flowers which have a bract, they are called bracteate, right? So flower with a bract is called bracteate, and some flowers, when they do not have a bract, they are called as ebracteate. E means without. Alright. Now here, this is something new that we are going to start. Floral symmetry. What is symmetry, children? We are talking of arrangement. That is, so many floral whorls we have discussed. Calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. That is, in what way are these arranged? So the arrangement of floral appendages on the axis of the flower is called floral symmetry. Now here we'll talk of two types, rather three types are there, but in your course it's been stressed on only two. So rightly, there are three ways that a flower can show the symmetry. The first is actinomorphic. Actinomorphic, let me show you the flower first. Here, the basis of this is to understand. First see this flower. Flower number A. This is actinomorphic or a regular flower. What do we mean to say? That in this flower, if you divide it in this way or this plane or this plane or any plane, now what happens is the left side will be exactly the replica of the right side. So that means any plane if you select, but the two divisions of the flower will be exactly equal, or the other two halves will be exactly identical. So such a flower is called as a regular or actinomorphic. How we give the sign to this flower? Actinomorphic is a circle and a cross inside. So such a flower can be divided by any vertical plane into two equal and similar halves. Example, mustard, brinjal, rose, shoe flower, etc. The other is zygomorphic. We also call it as irregular. For example, look at this. Structure B. This is a zygomorphic flower and this is seen in P, right? Lathyrus odoratus is the scientific name. So imagine if this is the flower, something like light purple or white in color. You cut it like this, what will happen? The two halves, one half will be this, the other half will be this. They will not be like equal. And such plants, such flowers, they are called as irregular or zygomorphic. So this is the definition. A flower which can be divided into two halves by only one vertical plane. So in this case, children, only one vertical plane would be, that is possible, not like this, but obviously, but other direction, that is possible. It's called as zygomorphic or irregular. So how it is different from the previous? Here, any direction will give two equal halves, but in this only one direction would give you two equal halves. The other directions, like if you're cutting like this, look at this, it will not give you equal half, but only one selective direction. So that is P or ocimum, right? Tulsi we call it. So P and ocimum or some other flowers. Then asymmetrical. Such flowers cannot be divided into two equal halves by any plane. Now in this, for example, this C, this is an asymmetrical flower. You cut it in any direction, children. No direction or no plane will give you equal halves. Example of this is canna. So the first page, let us see what all things we have done before we move to the second page. First I introduced what is a flower by definition. Then we revised with the structure of a typical flower, all the terminologies, the meaning of bract we revised, then terms bracteate and ebracteate, and the new things we learned. The symmetry in the flower, actinomorphic or regular, depicted by this. Zygomorphic or irregular is, the sign is this, a small dot, line and again a dot, right? And asymmetrical, like this is not mentioned in your course, but yes, A means without. So we'll understand there is no symmetry of any kind in any direction if you cut, right? Then moving to the next topic is again a new thing to learn. Flowers can be called as two types, isomerous and heteromerous, right? Now we know, children, the term iso means same and hetero means different. Like suppose understand. Suppose the basic number of parts in floral organs, in different floral organs is same. For example, 5 sepals, 5 petals, 5 stamens, like this, right? So such flowers, they are called isomerous. For example, bimerous when the parts are in numbers of 2, trimerous when they are in multiples of in numbers of 3 or multiples of 3, tetra, that means when numbers are 4 or multiples, and penta means 5 or the multiples of 5. So what are isomerous flowers, children? When there is same basic number of parts in different floral organs, right? Same basic number, that means calyx contains 5 petals, calyx contains 5 sepals, corolla contains 5 petals, then androecium is made up of 5 stamens, etc. Right? Or the carpel is, let's say, pentacarpellary, the number is 5 again. So such flowers will be called as iso. That means their basic number of parts in different floral organs is same. If they are in numbers of 2 or multiples of 2, bimerous, 3 or their multiples, trimerous, 4 or their multiples, tetramerous, 5 or their multiples, then pentamerous. The other category, what we call as heteromerous, right? What does it mean? In these flowers, when the number in the floral verse is neither the same nor the multiples are the same, right? That means the different floral organs of different floral structures, their members or the whorls of the like petals or sepals, etc., will not be in the same number or the multiples of the number. Then moving to the next thing, the floral whorls, if we say, they are basically 4 floral whorls. The calyx, I have numbered here and shown you. The calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. So moving in the same number, children, this is number 4. So moving in the same number, the calyx and corolla, they are not directly involved in reproduction, but indirectly, yes, right? And look at androecium and gynoecium. Androecium is the male part. That means if I draw the sign, it is circle and arrow, right? Gynoecium is the circle and a cross. So this is the female part. Now these two parts are directly involved in reproduction. So what happens is that these two floral whorls, they are called as necessary or essential or reproductive whorls. Why? Because they are directly taking part in reproduction. Without male and female, no reproduction is possible. So they are the necessary or essential whorls. Here, these two are not directly involved but indirectly. For example, the calyx, they are protective, right? And they also carry on photosynthesis in the young form like bud condition, etc. And corolla, they are attractive to attract the insects for pollination. So they are indirectly inviting the insects for pollination, right? Now, coming to the next term is complete and incomplete. Any flower which has all these 4 whorls present is called a complete whorl. Example, China rose, cotton, etc. And any flower which has any of the whorls missing, right? Like calyx, corolla present, androecium present, and gynoecium is missing. So it is not complete. So such a flower is called as incomplete. In other cases, calyx, corolla and gynoecium might be present, androecium goes missing. So it is again incomplete. So such flowers are called incomplete when any of the whorl is absent. Example, cucurbita. Again, let us revise the word poly and gamo. Poly means free and gamo means fused. So if I say gamosepalous, that means gamo means fused. What is fused? The sepals. So when the sepals are united. Then poly means free. So polysepalous means when the sepals are free. I like to show you here. Look at these conditions. A is polysepalous. You can see all the sepals are separate and they are free from each other. Look at the gamosepalous. These are kind of partially or wholly like fused or united, and therefore they are gamosepalous. Similarly, we have conditions like gamopetalous when the petals are fused, and that could be any degree of fusion. And polypetalous means when they are free from each other. Like, look at this. This is the free petals, right? Whereas here you can see this is the petals fused in a tubular form, right? Like this, they're forming a tube-like structure. And here they're something like a funnel shaped. So this is the polypetalous condition and this is the gamopetalous condition. Then moving to another term to revise, perianth. Now what happens, children? Sometimes there are flowers in which sepals and petals look like same or very similar. Like just now in this flower you can see sepals are green but the petals are colored. So anyone would differentiate. But imagine there are flowers when both look like almost the similar ones, and almost nobody can differentiate, right? So such collection of structures, either they are all green, right, or they are all colored, right, so that nobody can differentiate. So in that case the whole collection of sepals and petals, we'll not call them sepal and petal in that case, we call them as tepals, T-E-P-A-L-S, right? And the collection of them, like this here, we call the collection of sepals as calyx and petals collectively as corolla. But in that case, when they are looking similar, we call the entire collection as perianth. And one member will be called as tepal. So perianth, as I said, either could be all green, so resembling the sepals, right? Imagine corolla also, the petals also green. So such a perianth is called sepaloid perianth. That is, it is green like sepals. Or sometimes they all can be colored, anything but not green. So it could be any color. And in that case, they resemble the petals. So they're called as petaloid perianth. So these 2 pages, they were very simple, children. I'm sure you have understood. So these were the basic 2 pages of our first discussion on the morphology of flowering plants, right? I'll be sending you the notes. See that you copy down clearly, and this is exactly as per your syllabus requirement. Keep it in hand when you're sitting and studying on your own. Moving further, children. Another term which is a new thing to introduce is estivation. What is estivation? Estivation means mode of arrangement of petals and sepals in relation to one another in a flower bud. I'd like to show you here, children. See, in your textbook, it is given like this at page number 5.49. Like, we are going to discuss about various sorts of arrangements that are possible of petals and sepals. Like in your book, there are many things given. But your syllabus, see how I have made. It is restricting you to 3 things here. Volvate estivation, twisted estivation, imbricate, and vexillary. So first let us try to see how many types of estivations or arrangements of petals and sepals are possible. One is open, right? Open is not in your course, children. Second is volvate. Like, look at this diagram first. Volvate means imagine these are all petals or these are sepals, anything. Right? In this case, imagine they're petals, they're lying close to each other or simply touch each other, never overlap. You can see them. One petal, this is the second, third, fourth and fifth. It is not overlapping at any place. They are touching each other. They might simply touch, but they will never overlap, right? So such a type of arrangement is called volvate estivation. It is seen in a flower called Calotropis. Look at this one, this next one, twisted or contorted. Like if you compare this, like if this is the petal, it is kind of twisted. You can see one petal, one part will be the one overlapping on the top part of the other, and here the next partner, it will be under it. So see, this is one part of a petal under, one over. Second, under and over. Same is third, under and over. Fourth and fifth. So this type of arrangement of the petals, right, in which it is covering the margin of adjacent petal. You can see how it is covering the margin of adjacent petal, and the other margin is covered over by the margin of adjacent. Here it is covered itself by the other, will be called as twisted or contorted. Example, lady's finger. Third is imbricate. Imbricate means there is regular overlapping of petals. Imbricate means there is regular overlapping of petals. In this now there are 4 further varieties. Imbricate proper. The next is quinquensial. The third is ascending imbricate. And the fourth is descending imbricate or vexillary. Now try to understand this one. In your course, children, it's only mentioning vexillary. The other 3, they are not mentioned. Alright. So vexillary is something like this. The flower is P. Right. I have just now shown you. Here, if I again show you the flower, it is here. Externally, the flower looks like this. This one. So you can see one petal is big, 2 are small, and the 2 are even the smallest. So this is when we look at the estivation, the posterior petal overlapping the 2 lateral petals and the latter overlapping the 2 anterior petals. This is also called as Papilionaceous of the family Papilionaceae. Right? So you can see this. These are the ones that are the posterior petals. Right? This is called as the keel. Then the side ones which are called as the wing. And the final one, it's called as the standard. Right? So this type of overlapping is called as vexillary. Alright. So we saw 4 types, but in your course, as I said, only the ticked ones, children. Volvate, you understood, no overlapping. Here, yes, a very uniform overlapping, that one part over and the other is under. And here it was a regular overlapping of petals with 4 further subtypes, but only one in course, descending imbricate or vexillary. In your book, if I show you, it is here. Look here. Again at the same page, these are the 4 types mentioned, children. A is volvate, B is twisted, C is quinquensial, this is not in your syllabus. D is ascending imbricate, again not in your syllabus, but yes, descending imbricate or vexillary, or this is also called as the Papilionaceous, is very much in your course. Alright, so this is how the overlapping seen by the petals. Now moving, now when you're copying down, children, these notes, so you'll go like this. This will be spread on up till here. I'll be drawing a line, so you'll have no problem making the notes. Now coming to the new topic, cohesion of stamens. Cohesion means the we can say the numbering or attachment of the stamens. There are 4 conditions, rather 5 conditions in your course. Monadelphous, diadelphous, polyadelphous, syngenaceous and synandrous. Very important, children. A new thing totally you are studying. Please understand carefully. Mona means 1. Imagine this is the China rose, right? In this, all of you have seen it also, done in practicals in various classes 9th and 10th. Now what have you seen is that there are hundreds of stamens and they all are joined to form one staminal tube, right? So when filaments of all stamens are fused to form a tube-like structure, right, it is called as monadelphous. That means all the filaments will join up into one bundle. This is what monadelphous. That means all stamens through the filaments will join up to form one bundle. Look at this, how it is different. Diadelphous. The flower is P and the condition, there are total of 10 stamens, but look at the grouping, children. 9 bundled together and 1 is separate. So this 9 plus 1 arrangement. So we'll rightly call them as in 2 groups. And therefore it is called as diadelphous. So this is like 2 bundles of the stamens. Here, poly. Poly means more than 2 or many, right? So when filaments are united in more than 2 groups, like in this case 1 group, 2 group, 3 and the 4th group. So this will be called as a polyadelphous condition when they are in bundles of more than 2. Example is citrus. This is another very interesting one called as syngenaceous condition of stamens. And look at this diagram first. All the anthers, the pink structure is the anther. Anthers are all united, but the filaments are free. Imagine these are like 4 anthers shown. Flower is sunflower or ageratum. right? And ageratum. Sunflower is not ageratum. This is another flower and this is another. So when anthers are fused and filaments are free, the condition is called as syngenaceous. But look at this. What can you see? Here anthers also united and filaments also united, right? Nothing is free. So when anthers as well as filaments are united, right, to form a compound structure, example cucurbita and loofah. So such a condition is called as synandrous. So that was very interesting, children. The cohesion, once again, monadelphous means one bundle, diadelphous means two groups of anthers or the male parts or the stamens. Here three groups of the filaments you can see here. Then here the condition in which anthers are fused but the filaments are free, and here a very compound structure, typical one, anthers also fused and filaments also fused. So that is synandrous. Moving to another thing for today, adhesion of stamens. Adhesion of stamens, children, we have three terms to use but only two in your syllabus: epipetalous, epiphyllous or epitepilous, and gynandrous. Epipetalous. Now epi and petal, that means stamens are fused to the petals, right? And this is a condition seen in petunia. Here epiphyllous or epitepilous, right? So tepal, I told you, where did we use the term tepal? In a condition where the flower shows the presence of perianth, that means sepals and petals cannot be differentiated, then one structure is tepal but the collection is perianth. So in this thing, when we call epiphyllous or epitepilous, the stamens are fused with the petal like perianth lobes, example asphodilus. And gynandrous means it is stamens fused with gynoecium. It's seen in calotropis, but that's not in your syllabus. So please restrict only to two conditions: epipetalous, stamens fused with petals, and epiphyllous or epitepilous, stamens fused with petal-like perianth lobes. And coming to the last topic for today, number of anther lobes. Imagine, suppose this is one stamen, right? And this is another stamen. What is the difference, children? Here, this is one anther lobe, and here there are two anther lobes. Now in your previous classes you have studied that in one lobe there are two structures called as pollen sac, right? So in one lobe only there are two pollen sac, you can clearly see that, right? And they are flooded with very good number and very high number of pollen grains. So such a condition where anther is one lobed only, or indirectly there are two pollen sac, such a condition is called as monothecous. Mono means one, right? Example, China rose, Acacia, etc. And the other condition here, when the stamen has two anther lobes, so how many pollen sac, children? Two in each, that means total of 4. So this is 4 pollen sacs in all of them. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. So this will be called as a condition called as bithecous or dithecous. Both the terms bi or di both means 2. So where both the anther lobes are present, stamen is called as bithecous or dithecous. And this is seen in the flower called agimon. So that's all for today, children. 4 pages I am sending, and this is almost half of the topic here. The other half I'll be posting it by tomorrow. Very, very simple topic on flower, children, and mostly it is revisionary and restrict exactly to the syllabus. That's why I'm making notes, because if I show you the same from the textbook, children, it's really elaborate. So in your textbook, it begins from over here, page number 5.41, right? So I'm making it as per your syllabus, children, just giving you exactly the way, right? Yes, of course, refer to the textbook, please go through, but ensure that you first mark the terms. Like on this page, see, everything is not there. Only the terms that I have colored in blue, they form your typical terminologies. The rest are not in your syllabus. Here also, of the entire page, only the blue terms are asked. So that's what, children, that's what you have to go through the syllabus at the same time parallel to what you're studying. And that's why I give importance to the notes, compile at one place, keep revising. Things are really simple. And 4 pages I am sending, number 1, 2, 3 and 4. So herewith we complete almost half the new thing to revise, and tomorrow I'll try to complete this and move on further. Please complete the topics to write whatever we are sending regularly. Thank you.